our way.
There we are, back again.
Back in the saddle again. What do you think of my hat?
Wow, it could be a collector's item.
It is. I've decided that I'm always going to wear a different hat. You know, the saying, he wears a different hat.
Well, there's that saying, yeah. I don't know where we could take that one
Uh,
though.
or we could be riding a horse of another color.
Or a horse with no name.
That's right.
You can never figure out if you're on a horse for 2 weeks riding through the desert. Surely to God, he would have given him a name by then. But
I know. That could be a discussion for another time.
yeah, probably best to leave sleeping horses lie.
So it's been a busy week since we last spoke.
Yeah, there's been a lot going on, that's for sure.
In the world of borders and non-borders. I notice sadly that situation in Mexico didn't turn out too well for a couple of people.
Mm-hmm.
But
it's kind of a strange one, that one. So
yeah, it is. It does raise questions that why would you go all the way down there from North Carolina to get a tummy tuck?
cost, maybe.
Okay, but it seemed that it wasn't well thought out in terms of the people who were going down there.
Well,
Like, why would you go to the most dangerous part of Mexico?
there's going to be questions that we're never going to get answered, but it could be quite as simple as they went online and found a cheap place in Juarez and thought, well, if I can do that, I can get there without really checking into it kind of reminds me of the travels that we did, and we went into Thailand, and you went into Bangkok's big airport there, and in several different languages, the basic message is the importation of drugs into Thailand is cause for the death penalty, or words to that effect. Being a kind of a literal kind of guy, I take that as, yeah, I don't think they want drugs coming in. For some people, there's probably a bit of an ambiguity there. Like, what do they really mean? Drugs is heroin okay, or is aspirin okay, or what is it? And then there's the other ones, which I like to refer to as the Wizard of Oz type, that you have to realize that you're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. They mean what they mean. And some people just, they don't understand. They don't think the law applies to them. They think they're going to get, I don't know. Maybe in this particular case down in Mexico, they just didn't realize that that was a bad place, or that they could get into serious trouble, or yeah, I don't know.
I think it's one of those instances where there are more questions than answers as to how this all unraveled, because the automatic go-to discussion afterwards was all about these people who were murdered essentially by drug cartel types who mistook them ostensibly for Haitian colleagues, druggies, was really the fault of these four Americans who went into Mexico. Wow. And then the immediately the discussion was, particularly American media got really pumped up on this, as did certain politicians, that the cartels have to be dealt with now, because these two people were killed, and so on, and they whipped up a whole lot of hubris on this one. to the point where Lindsey Graham, the senator, is talking about sending the U.S. military and he'll fix the problem for Mexico. Now, that's, without getting into too philosophical discussion about who fixes what where, it's none of the United States it has no business going into Mexico fixing the problem of the Mexicans. And while maybe they can certainly work with the Mexicans to deal with the cartels, I get a little nervous when we're going to go in there and fix things for some other country. Moreover, the whole fentanyl thing, which is what they're trying to segue into with this political maneuvering. If there wasn't such a big demand in the U.S. for drugs, there'd be no cartel business.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And to suggest that, we'll fix it by dealing with it in Mexico, why don't you fix it just for start fixing it in the United States? Deal with the demand problem, number one. And then number two, if you're so upset over people bringing stuff in or people coming in, fix your border, build the wall, put the fence up, put some gates in. I just found that this particular event, as tragic it was for these two folks who were killed and their families. It started off a 3 or 4 day firestorm politically, which I thought was typical of the knee-jerk reaction. It's always someone else's fault that you're screwing up. I'm sorry. The fentanyl issue is all about demand. Okay.
Well, too, and it doesn't matter whether it's the U.S., whether it's Canada, whether it's Britain, Australia, New Zealand. You have no business in trying to solve somebody else's problems, you're right, without looking at your own backyard. In BC here, we've got, I can't lost count of the number of people that we've lost due to the fentanyl deaths. And this has been going on since 2015, 2016. So the fact that 2 people got killed in Mexico, which ostensibly is trying to lead into perhaps a fentanyl issue, military is not the answer. Regime change isn't the answer. You're right. It's got to be, let's try and get this fixed up in our own place first and stop the reliance on that. However, having said that, if you clean up that particular aspect of it, what else is going to come down the pipeline that somebody's going to jump on and try, and then it becomes the next best thing or the next greatest invention, or I don't know. It's an issue with the population. There's no question about it. And it doesn't matter whether it's Canadians, Americans, Brits, French. Yeah.
Well, and our community at BORDERPOL are basically folks who are interested in border management and the whole issue of politics and technology and social issues that revolve around the border. One of the things that came across my desk this morning was from The Hill, which is a newspaper that said that the Border Patrol is employing therapy dogs to reduce the suicide of agents. It said that the Border Patrol, this is how dangerous it's getting to be just a plain ordinary border official. The Border Patrol in the U.S. has been using canines since 1986 and began training 4 dogs to detect concealed narcotics and so on. But the Border Patrol has recently expanded the program to include therapy dogs because 14 of its agents committed suicide in 2022. I mean, this is really something here. It established a support canine program to provide support for agents suffering from stress, anxiety, and depression. Chaplains and agents from the Border Patrol Peer Support Chaplaincy Program are using specially trained therapy dogs to help the agents. The Border Patrol is just purportedly preparing for record numbers of illegal crossings, as many as 14,000 a day. with the termination of 42, Title 42. Former Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott attributes the low morale to being overwhelmed by the skyrocketing increase in illegal crossings and the needs to process them. The way to treat agents now is with therapy dogs. 42 agents have lost their lives during President Biden's presidency. I mean,
Well,
this is just beyond the pale here.
It used to be that you associated post-traumatic stress with combat soldiers, and I guess what this is leading into now is that for border agents, particularly as you're citing in the United States, but I don't think it's limited there, is that this whole issue of protecting sovereignty it's almost becoming like a war zone. And I would hope that the governments will look at this and treat it in the proper manner of helping the agents out and not trying to sweep it under the rugs or come up with 30-second news item tidbits and then do nothing else about it. You know, I know here in Canada we've had successive governments that have shied away from the social contract with our military veterans, and which I think is wrong personally. And you want these people to go out and do these kinds of jobs, but you're not going to take care of them. You're not going to look after them. That is a bit wrong.
A bit. Then, of course, the whole influence issue of countries poking their noses in other countries' business. It's one thing for Lindsey Graham to talk about what he's going to do to the Mexican cartels with the military, and I think it is a lot of hubris indeed. But at the same time, there seems to be an awful lot of smoke over the influence of China in Canada in 2 elections, and similarly the impact of Chinese involvement in U.S. politics. But here at home, the Prime Minister is really, walls must be closing in on this fellow, because it's just one revelation after the next of the direct influence through cash payments to candidates who the PRC would like to see in Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not unusual for countries to poke their nose in other countries' business by saying we would prefer candidate A over B, or whatever, regime X over regime Y, for political or economic or social or environmental or whatever other issue you want to, whatever box you want to tick off. But this one is an existential crisis for this government in Canada, because it really suggests that there's a very, very deep and sustaining influence in the machinery of government, which you brought up earlier in the pre-broadcast discussion. What happens when you lose trust in the government? What happens to the citizens of a country that goes down this path of losing respect for the leadership, and then parallelly losing trust in the government? What does that society end up looking like?
Yeah. Bit worrying on my part, I mean, I guess the other side of that coin is what would happen if you called an election and nobody showed up?
Well, the whole issue of government in 2023 has been so tainted with I guess downstream cultural nonsense, which is it goes back to 2 years of sitting around during the pandemic dreaming up goofy stuff. I'm sorry. When you have a government bureaucracy that doesn't want to go back to work, for example, which is the situation in Canada, where the union, I'm not sure if the actual workers are into this, but their unions, public sector unions, are saying, oh no, we're not going back to work. And you go, and then they want a 30% raise, and you're wondering, well, what trust will I have in the government to, in respect for the government that goes along with this kind of idea? I don't know if, because this is coming to a head. At the same time, as you know, they're merely giving themselves a raise on April 1st. That is to say, the politicians, while they're going to foist, and we spoke about this in the last broadcast, they're foisting a plethora of new taxes on the shoulders of those who are still eking it out on at some job that actually requires them to produce wealth and to be taxed on it. So you have more than 50%, some pundits are saying, of people who work for the government in one form or another, while the other less than 50% are the ones who actually have to produce goods and services that are taxed on it to pay for the other 50% to do what they do. And, you know, this is not a sustainable business model.
No, it's not. But you got to sit back. If you give these wage increases out, that's fueling and setting fire to the economy anyway. And we're already talking the R word. I don't know if that's going to come into fruition or not, but we've mentioned it before on broadcast. You know, I can afford to put some gas in my car so that I can drive to find out I can't afford groceries, or I can afford groceries, but I can't afford to put anything in the car to go and get them. So yeah, it's going to reach, if it hasn't already, it's going to reach a boiling point. And I think the politicians, it goes back in Canada quite a few decades ago now with the upsurgence of the Reform Party. They came in, and one of the big things was that they said they weren't going to get themselves involved in the golden pension plan of the parliament, which eventually they all did sign on to. But maybe it was the symbolic action that made them appealable. Could we have politicians now that can stand up and say, you know, it's wrong? And like, why are we taking this wage increase when we've got people that, you know, are making very terrible choices of whether they can feed themselves or whether they can go to work? I don't know where it's going to go or what's going to happen. I'm almost on that camp where I'm a little concerned about losing faith with the government.
Well, I dare say that there are probably many who, if they haven't lost faith, don't care what the government says anymore, because the only people that you listen to are those you respect. And I think we talk about the R word, that's another R word which is very much missing.
Well, it's been missing for decades, but you know.
Yeah, but we're really coming, and I don't think it's just something that's Canadian.
No, I don't think it is either.
I mean, how much respect do you see being, where's the love? I guess I'll put it another way. Where is the love, small l, that the people who are the governed have for their leaders? I don't see that. You know, I don't see people being very enthusiastic about liking any of these folks. You know, and I won't name any of them, but I'm looking at the G7 leadership, and I don't think any of them is liked to any great degree. And the R word, respected, that's a whole other thing. Respect is earned. They're not doing a very good job at earning it. You know, there's a great deal of discontent in society, which, because of the antics of this crowd, which is more intent on dividing people rather than bringing them together, they're more intent on putting people into boxes that they can tick off for various reasons that their focus groups think will get them elected next time around. So they balance off one group against another. Well, if we lose the vote of this crowd, we'll get more from that crowd because, we'll play up to them and disregard that others. And then you subdivide, society into groups, into these silos, if you will, but they're actually just boxes on a tally sheet. And you really don't have any respect for these people because they're treating the governed like they're little chess pieces on a board. And
Pawns come to mind, yeah.
yeah, pawns, serfs, smurfs,
Peons.
yeah, peons. So we really have, I think, had a fairly long run of leadership, which isn't very good, which
Well,
isn't very talented, which isn't very likable. Because what we have when I talk to my friends and neighbors, they tell me it's sort of the same thing. Well, this guy's just slightly less smelly than that woman, or you know what I'm saying? It's just it's which of the
which is the
dislikables do I want to really, and then if you still have some element of civic duty, okay, I'll hold my nose and I'll vote for the one that stinks the least.
Yeah. The lesser of two evils. Yeah.
Yeah, lots of metaphors there, but I mean, you're right. And I think that the great flush might happen once these guys run out of rope. In other words, their game is up, and people will say, "Look, they'll look for a group of leaders that will always emerge." And it's cyclical. Let's face it. History shows us that you go from the top to the bottom like a wheel, and you come back up again. And along the way, you can see, for example, the number of people who've decided not to run in the next election, people who are resigning. The toxicity of some of these folks is really starting to become evident, and they stink, and people can smell the
yeah. Well, yeah, and we talked about that a couple of days ago, leading up to our broadcast today. We had a recent relatively high profile individual announce they're not running in the next election, and actually stepping aside now. And I guess where I'm going with this is that in his exit speech was basically laying the groundwork down for how the parliament here in Canada and maybe around the world is to take the adversarial nature out of this, take the hate out of it, take the pettiness out of things, and deal with issues in an adult manner. I watch our C-SPAN channel, and I think that there's kindergarten classes that are better run than the House of Commons. So maybe that clip of the MP in question, Mr. Garneau, maybe that should become like a rallying clause. Let's look at that and let's take that to heart.
Well, we can hope. I suspect that certainly we watch the big players from here, as you know. We look at France, the leadership of France. Macron, he's not doing very well. He's got people are out in the street because the literally hundreds of thousands of people are on the street protesting because of pension reform that is totally contrary to what he promised his electors 4 years ago, or even 2 years ago. The leadership in Germany is for all intents and purposes totally inept, and it shows that the folks there are beside themselves as their economy goes south. The UK has really no idea, well, after 3 p.m.s in the last year, what to do. And they've gone from pillar to post with these three. I'm not sure if there's any love being provided to the current PM, and certainly none of that love seems to be attracted to the two folks on this side of the Atlantic. So the old guard that got away for the last, I would say, decade with excessive spending, and then beyond the excessive spending and the childlike management of social programs and the whole climate change thing and so on. The 2 years of the pandemic, I think, really was what showed the folks how they were manipulated and how wrong so many things were and how ill prepared the leadership was. And then as time goes on now and the leaks come out, who lied about what, who made money out of thin air, and the deal, that was, I guess, in a way, if you want to pick a time of sort of the rot setting in, it was during the pandemic. And I think that it also gave folks a lot of time on their hands to do nothing, and then start to figure out very quickly that by doing nothing, we're going down the tube here, because everybody can't sit around at home and do nothing. And then some kind of, the tinfoil types will tell you, well, the shots made people crazy. I don't think so. I think sitting at home doing nothing got people atrophied, not only physically, but mentally. And then when it came to, well, okay, this is over, like everything else, it's cyclical. The pandemic is over. They've suddenly discovered, wait a second, this is 2 years lost. This is, and there's all sorts of consequential negative issues. And a lot of it goes back to the trust thing we're talking about, the respect issue. And then what do you do?
The respect. I mean, when I was coming up, we through the civil service, we had meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to do what we're talking about here. I'm the boss, and I'm going to pretend that you're leading this discussion to end up where I really want you to be, which is not the way you gain respect, which is not the way you garner your people behind you. We started off, oh gosh, when we were growing up, we had what was called the generation gap. Well, that generation gap has gone now, and it's become a credibility gap, a respectability gap, whatever you want to call it. And you look at that and you think, long gone are the days when somebody can come up and say, Bob, the sky is pink, the earth is flat, and water is not wet. And you would think, oh, that's coming from so-and-so. I respect him. I think I can believe that. As opposed to the group of clowns that we have running the various places now will come up and say, no, the sky's blue, the earth is round, and water is wet. And you're going to say, I don't know where you're getting that information from, but I'm certainly not going to follow you. And that is really what's happened now. We just do not believe anything that's coming out of the mouths of these people.
Well, if you maybe the earth is flat. Yeah, and the reason I say that is everything is so linear with these people. It's just a line. They don't seem to have any. Clearly, there's no horizon here with these folks. It's everything is kinetic, so to speak. So if they're going to tell you that water's not wet and the sky's not blue, you're supposed to take that on as a
mantra.
Exactly, because in this flat, like being within the flat Earth society, we're part of this very small I say linear thinking, and that's the way it should. So to suggest that the Earth isn't flat with these folks would be heresy. You know, I know this is almost silly, but you think about it. If you're going to tell me there are 27 genders, and I'm sure the Earth is flat. Gotta be, right?
Well, certainly look
Because
at
when I walk out, if
Hmm.
I keep walking on flat. There might be some hills, but it's always flat. You know, no
You look at those
science.
pictures from space, it's just a disk.
It's just a disc, a little blue ball in black background. Yeah, I know
Mm.
we're being silly now, but the point is that it is. We've been. You said the adults need to take over, and the adults are hiding somewhere in I don't know, in the bushes.
Well, I guess that's the whole point of maybe what we're kind of wrapping up to here is that things are cyclical. The more you do something, the more they come back. And I equate that back to when I first started in the service. We had a bunch of old World War II vets that you kind of respected.
Yes.
But like a lot of things in government, it grew stale, it grew old, and I found myself thinking at many times, got to help these old farts move on so that some of us young people can take over, without really realizing that that in itself was a big mistake. Because soon after some of these new people, young people took over, a lot of us found ourselves saying, I sure wish we could have the old guard back again. So
Yeah.
the adults are hiding. Hopefully they'll come out. Hopefully they'll be smart enough. Hopefully they'll be willing to take on the responsibility that's going to be a fit for them, because it's certainly becoming a big mess, and I don't know how anybody's going to dig it out.
Well, it certainly is one that, again, going back to earlier conversation with regard to the fentanyl and the illegal immigration problem for the Americans, and certainly has impact in Canada through Roxton Road, is that you can't just summon up a non-existent military. You can't just summon up the support of the taxpayers to go and put more treasure and blood into something you can't even begin to understand or try to explain to them. I mean, so when you talk about going back to the old when the old WW2 vets spoke to us when we were 30, 40 years ago, they came from a position of experience about how tough things were and had to be fixed. This bunch currently running now hasn't got that background. Okay, there's a big gap here between those folks and the ones that we were referring to earlier. They don't have any experience of hardship and what it the famous Churchillian speech. All I can give you is blood, sweat, and tears. At the moment, all these folks are giving us is nonsense. Stop.
Mm.
You know, there's not any other
Or
words I can come up
yeah,
with.
or trying the tried and true method of the last few years is that we will deflect, or we will accuse, or we will. And you're right, it goes back to this can't come back to me. It's not my problem. It's not my fault. I didn't know it was going to do. It's a physics law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, politics is kind of the same way. You do something without really thinking through, and you're going to have to live with the consequences of that.
Well, it's really and it's been said in other circles, the downstream effect of the culture has infected our politics, our economics, and so on. The Hollywood kind of politics that was created, and I don't mean Hollywood in a geographic sense, I mean in a metaphorical sense. You know, it's been around for 30 years, except what's happened is that that crowd actually believes this stuff, and it's gone downstream, and hence you get the ridiculous policies, the ones that are anti-human, the ones that are basically categorized, what we talked about earlier, all that categorization, when they can't figure out the difference between equality and inclusion. I mean, these are concepts that are completely destroying completely and effectively destroying sort of the standard civil societies that we created, you know, in the traditional neoliberal world. These people don't even understand that concept. So it's all about sustaining themselves in positions of power, but without offering any way, shape, or form the rejection to the taxpayers, to the citizens, to the people they govern, that what they're doing is honorable, what they're doing is really good for us, and hence they're going to earn our respect and our trust. These people have no clue how to do that. They just pontificate, as you say, with obfuscations and lofty speeches, which when you start to look at them closely, they said nothing. They meant nothing other than spending money, which they're very good at for, you know, special interest groups. And I guess linked to that is the corruption issue, which I don't even know if the word corruption is such a bad word anymore with these folks.
Well, yeah. I guess in the couple of minutes we got left, I guess my takeaway from this whole thing is to anybody that's listening, to our viewers, and again, if I'm wrong, please let me know. It's to throw down a challenge. If you know somebody that is adult, that can do this kind of thing, that has some sort of semblance of respect, why aren't we trying to get those people to come in and make things better? Yeah, I'm sure over the next couple of elections, it doesn't matter which country you're in, it's going to go back to, as you said, I'm going to go in, I'm going to vote the lesser of two evils, and I'm going to do that by holding my nose because the smell is terrible, but we need somebody to do something. And hopefully the circle will come full round, and we're going to start to get those people back in that can actually fix things and can work and get things done without worrying about whether their pockets are going to be lined or not lined or whatever.
Yeah, and I might add, I don't care what letters after their political affiliation. I just want them to start being transparent, principled, and forthright, which is something that we're desperately in need of. Okay, well, I guess that's on a positive note, Bob.
Yeah, well, it can only get better.
Yeah, let's hope.
Yeah.
All right, I got to go out and shovel snow now because we're back in another storm, and I'll see you next week.
We don't have that, but we'll certainly be thinking about you as we bask in our sunshine out here.
Okay, take care. See you next week. Bye.
You bet.